Today, we explore how this date completely reshaped our world across five powerful dimensions: culture, education, finance, politics, and technology. This day proves that history never rests. Let's dive into the fascinating interconnected events of this date that continue to influence how we live, think, and innovate today. So, without much further ado, let's go.
If you look at a calendar, I mean, every day is just a numbered square, right? But if you dig into the history of July 21st, you hit this historical singularity. It is the day Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, a massive telecommunications empire collapsed, and, well, a wizarding era ended. So we're unpacking a stack of sources today for this custom-tailored deep dive for you, and our mission is to figure out how one random square on the calendar just keeps magnetizing these world-changing events.
Yeah, it really is a bizarre convergence when you lay it all out.
Right. So let's start with an actual picnic that, well, turned into an absolute bloodbath.
Oh, yeah. So we're looking at July 24th, 1861, the First Battle of Bull Run. Washington elites actually packed literal picnic baskets, like they rode out in carriages just to watch the Union crush the
And
Confederates.
literally thought war was a spectator sport.
Exactly. But the Union Army just suffered from terrible logistical coordination. And the Confederates, meanwhile, they used the railroad network to secretly rush in fresh reinforcements. Yeah, so the Union line completely collapsed. It led to this frantic, chaotic retreat back to D.C. that the press actually ruthlessly mocked as the Great Skedaddle.
The Great Skedaddle. I mean,
Yeah.
that naive view of warfare completely vanishes by the time we hit another July 21st, right?
Yeah.
In 1944, the U.S. launches W-Day, which was the strategic code name for the massive amphibious landing to recapture Guam from Japan.
Right. Definitely no picnics there.
None at all. The U.S. brought just this overwhelming force, outnumbering the defenders 3-1, just to secure a critical airfield in the Pacific.
Right, and those physical conflicts really forced a harsh reality check on people. But just a couple decades earlier, on July 24th, 1925, Americans were fighting a completely different war over reality itself.
The Scopes trial.
Exactly, the Scopes monkey trial. It ended with the teacher, John Scopes, being fined $100 for teaching evolution.
Well, the craziest part about the Scopes trial, at least from the sources we're looking at, is that it was essentially a 1920s reality TV stunt. Like, a local coal company manager engineered the whole thing just to bring tourist dollars to Dayton, Tennessee. Scopes wasn't even sure he had actually taught evolution. They just needed a warm body to challenge the state law on purpose.
Yeah, but I mean, the legal strategy was brilliant. The defense wasn't even trying to prove Scopes didn't do it.
Wait, really?
No, they wanted him found guilty. That way they could appeal the verdict to a higher court and try to strike down the anti-evolution law entirely. It was this staged, very public collision, specifically to test the boundaries between modern science and fundamentalism.
Okay, so you have these highly publicized battles over what gets taught in schools. But then, fast forward exactly 50 years to July 21st, 1975, and the fight shifts to who actually gets funded in those schools. That is when Title IX regulations officially take effect.
Right, and most people hear Title IX and immediately think of women's sports.
Yeah.
But activists like Bunny Sandler and Representative Patsy Mink, they designed it as a much broader weapon for educational equity. The mechanism was simple but devastating.
Yes.
Well, if a school discriminated based on sex and admissions or hiring or academics, the federal government would just pull their funding. It hit discriminatory institutions right in the wallet.
Right in the wallet. Speaking of wallets, July 21st is apparently cursed for Wall Street. Because in 2002, WorldCom files for what was then the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history. How does a massive telecom giant just implode overnight?
Through an incredibly brazen accounting trick, basically. WorldCom took regular, everyday operating expenses, like the fees they paid to use other companies' phone networks, and they classified them on their books as long-term capital investments.
Oh.
Yeah, so that magically erased billions in routine expenses from their current balance sheet, creating phantom profits completely out of thin air.
Until the illusion broke. And then exactly 8 years later, July 21, 2010, the Dodd-Frank Act is signed into law to supposedly fix this kind of greed. I look at Dodd-Frank, and honestly, it seems like a massive paper tiger. Did it actually change the mechanics of banking, or did Wall Street just, hire better compliance lawyers?
I mean, it did change the mechanics, primarily by forcing banks to hold more capital in reserve. It restricted how much borrowed money they could use to make risky bets.
Right.
But you're right to be skeptical here, because smaller banks eventually lobbied their way out of the strictest oversight. You can mandate reserve requirements all you want, but you really can't legislate away human ambition.
Which brings us to the ultimate human ambition, I think, leaving the planet entirely. By universal time, Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface on July 21st, 1969.
Yeah, leaving footprints in the lunar dust that will remain intact for millions of years, simply because the moon has no atmosphere and therefore no wind to wash them away.
600 million people watched that happen live. And in a bizarrely similar moment of global unity, on July 21st, 2007, the final Harry Potter book hits shelves.
Millions of people collectively holding their breath, whether it's the peak of the space race or the finale of a massive cultural phenomenon, these events literally force the entire globe onto the exact same page.
So, July 21st, the bloody reality check of Bull Run, the weaponization of federal funding and tidal knives, the phantom profits of WorldCom, and footsteps in lunar dust. It leaves you wondering, do dates like this just randomly accumulate historic milestones by pure statistical chance? Or is there something about the deep, stagnant heat of midsummer that drives human imagination, ambition, and conflict right to the breaking point?
Hi viewers, family and friends. How did you like the content of this video? Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Please write in the comments your name and the place you are watching from. Since our viewing family is spread all over the world, it will be nice to know which city and the country you are watching from, so I can say hello to you. Science and technology. Reading and listening to the historical accomplishments on this date of those who have gone before us, I, as a professional engineer with interest in structural engineering, energy-efficient buildings, ICF construction, and as Google Docs expert with interest in spreadsheet-based solutions, draw inspiration to ask of myself the million-dollar question. What would I accomplish today? Think about the Japanese practice of Kaizen. Let me know in the comments. What would you accomplish today? Your subscribing to the channel inspires me to post more such videos. Thanks for your patronage. See you in the next video. Sincerely, Yogi Anand.